Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass.net. So I've been getting a lot of requests recently for some lessons on reggae bass lines. So this week I'm going to work through 5 awesome riffs from some of the most popular songs by the great Bob Marley. The bass player is Aston Family Man Barrett, and we'll look at what he's playing, and then I'll give you some tips on how to get that reggae sound and feel. So first of all, let's just run through the notes of each of those riffs for the more impatient of you, and then afterwards I'll give you the tips on tone, so be sure to stick around for that. So first of all, let's have a look at the bass riff from Waiting in Vain. So here we have it with the track. So as always, the lesson workbook and the track are available to download from Talkingbass.net, so just follow the link in the info below and then you'll be able to play along. So this riff's in the key of A flat and we're moving between the chords A flat and D. So we begin on the A flat 4th fret of the E string, and we just have, okay, so we've got A flat to B flat and back, so 4th fret to the 6th fret on the E string. So and that's the rhythm we're using, 3, 4. Okay, then for the second half of that we have this little bubbly syncopated line, so again just on the A flat and the B flat, so that's 4th fret to the 6th fret E string. So slowly, 3, 4. Then we move up to the D flat, so we're at the 4th fret of the A string, and we've pretty much got the same thing that we've just played down on the E string. So okay, so it's D flat to E flat this time, 4th fret to 6th fret of the A string. So slowly, 3, 4. Then we have this little descending line. Okay, so we start up at the C, 5th fret of the G string, then we come down B flat, A flat, F, D flat. So 5th fret, 3rd fret G string, then 6th fret, 3rd fret D string, and then the 4th fret on the A string. Okay, and that's the whole line. So all together, very slowly, 3, 4. Okay, in terms of the fingering in both hands, for the initial bass lines we're just using the 1st finger and the 4th finger. So, okay, but when we get to this line here, in terms of the fingering of the fretting hand, we've got 3rd finger, 1st finger at the top, then 4th finger, 1st finger, and then 2nd finger on the A string. And in terms of the picking hand, I'd advise you to start with the 1st finger, the index finger, when you play the 1st note, the C there at the top, and then come down 2, 1, 2, 1, so middle, index, middle, index. That makes it a lot easier for coming down across the strings. Some of you might automatically rake there, rake across the strings, but if you're alternate picking, it's a lot easier if you're playing middle index, okay? So middle index, okay? So just a few tips on the fingering there. One thing really worth focusing on bass lines like this is the note duration, because it can make a really big difference to the feel there. And in this particular bass line, we've got quite a lot of staccato notes. So listen to the note duration here. So. Okay, so it's all bump, 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 bump. As opposed to that would be full held durations. I'm cutting the notes short. Okay, so these bass lines, it's actually a lot more about what you don't play than what you do play. You know, getting those spaces in there, that really gives a lot of the feel in there. So start slowly, just build up speed, and then you can play with the track. So you want to start out really slowly, 2, 3, 4. And don't worry about playing it out of time to begin with. You know, you just want to get it under your fingers. Then as you build up speed, you know, you'll start to feel a lot more comfortable. Then you can play with the track. Next up, we have the song Three Little Birds, which sounds like this. So we're in the key of A major, we've got 2 bars of A, 1 bar of D, and then 1 bar of A. And I mentioned the chord progression in there because it's really useful for actually memorizing the riff, because we've got those little waypoints in there. We're thinking A, D, A. And if you know your arpeggios and all of that stuff, it can be really helpful because we are actually outlining the chords in there using arpeggios. That's a very, very common technique from people like Aston Barrett. So we begin on the A, 5th fret of the A string. Just 3 notes in there. Then we move on to the A string and have E, C sharp, E. Okay, so 7th fret, 4th fret, 7th fret. That's an outline of an A major arpeggio. So if you know your arpeggios, you'll be able to memorize that really easily. So then we have pretty much the same line again for the second bar, but we're going to play some repeated notes on the A. Again, a very, very heavily used technique in reggae bass lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay. Okay, so those 2 bars. That's the first 2 bars. So then we move up to the D. So we've changed the chord there. So okay, so we're playing those 3 notes again. And then we've got this little, so we slide up, so we've got a slide up there from the E up to the F sharp, so it's the 2nd to the major 3rd. So we slide up there, 7th fret to the 9th fret, then up to the A there, which is the 5th of the chord. So that's the, what's that, 7th fret again on the D string. So then we play back to the F sharp again, 9th fret A string, and then up to the A, 7th fret of the D string. So and then we can slide down again. So, and then for the final bar, we have a repeat of our second bar with. Okay, so it's a very repetitive bass line. We're just moving it through the chords. So, very slowly. That's it. Again, focus on the gaps in there. So when I play those 3 notes, then we've got that gap. It's not, you know, we've got the gap. gap, gap. Okay, so really, really focus on the gaps in there. So, as always, start slowly, build up speed, and then you can try with the track. The next riff is from the song Stir It Up, and it sounds like this. Again, we're in the key of A major, and this time we've got a chord progression of A, D, and E. And again, we're using arpeggios in here, so you'll see those major arpeggios. So for any of you out there that are wondering why you need to learn your arpeggios and chord tones and things like that, and how do you apply them, here you can see them in action, you can see them in application, and it really makes it a lot easier for memorizing stuff like this, because it's a familiar pattern if you know your arpeggios. So, we begin on A. So, 5th fret of the E string. Then we have C sharp to D and back. Okay, so 4th fret, 5th fret on the A string. So that's all on the A major. Then we move up to the D major and we play the D major arpeggio. So we have D, F sharp, A. So that's 5th fret, A string, then 4th fret and 7th fret on the D string. And then exactly the same pattern moved up a whole step. So we've got E, G sharp, B. So 7th fret A string, then 6th fret and 9th fret on the D string. And we actually play the D again before we play the E, just as a little approach into it. So. And that's it. Now, one thing you might have noticed when I was playing it earlier is that I actually used one finger for the whole thing, and that's because it's got a very muted sound on the original. So what I'm doing is I'm playing with one finger and then just bringing these other fingers down to mute it a little. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of doing this. You could use foam under the strings. I'm not sure exactly how Aston's doing it on the original because it doesn't always have that muted sound, but it does have a very sharp attack and very quick release on there. So we've got but don't worry too much about doing that. I just did it for the effect in there. If you want to just play it, you could actually cut the notes short. You know, to emulate that effect. But either way, it doesn't really matter. You know, just try and feel it and just, you know, get it to sound how you want it to sound. So, like I said, be aware of those arpeggios in there. You know, you want to learn a good old major arpeggio and see them working through the chord progression. Okay, so you want to try that and then try it along with the track. Now let's try something a little quicker. So this is the opening riff from the tune Exodus. So this riff's in A minor and we start on the A, 5th fret of the E string. Now I'm playing this with the pinky, the 4th finger, to begin with, because we want to be able to drop down to this 3rd fret for the G. So we move between the A and the G. So we have, okay, so we're going A, G, A, G, A. So 4th finger, 1st finger, 4th finger, 1st finger, 4th finger. Now each one of those is staccato apart from the last one. So, okay. Then we move up to the C, 3rd fret of the A string, and then back to the A, 5th fret of the E string. Then we have this little run up, G, G sharp, and A. 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret, E string. Okay, so that's the first 2 bars. The second 2 bars are a repeat pretty much of those first 2, but we have a little variation on the rhythm in the last bar. So we have exactly the same, and then instead of being on the off beat for the C, we actually play on the beat. So we're actually playing on beat 1 for the C. Okay, in the first half we actually play on the and of 1 there, so. And that's the whole riff. So, as I mentioned before, you really want to focus on the note duration in here. And it's actually quite tricky to do with this riff, because when you first start out, it's all staccato, and then we've just got that held note there. And actually picking that one out can, it can throw you a little at first, so. Okay, so really focus on the note durations. So again, start out slow, then build up speed, because this one's a little bit quicker, and then you can play along with the track. It is worth mentioning at this point that with all of these riffs, Aston does tend to play a lot of variations on them throughout the tunes. It's not a case of just, it's that riff and you play it all the way through. There's a lot of different variations, just as with the drums. You don't just get a single drum beat going all the way through. There's a lot of variation. So these, it's worth getting these under your fingers just as a kind of foundation, but then it's worth listening to the originals and listening to all those variations. One thing to be aware of with Exodus is that little run up, he actually plays it an octave higher on other parts of the riff. He actually plays it up here, but I'm not working through all of the riffs. This is just individual riffs from various parts of the tunes. So, like I say, listen through the tunes, use that as a foundation, and then just work on those variations. Finally, we have a longer riff in the shape of the opening riff from I Shot the Sheriff, which sounds like this. So this tune is in the key of G minor, and we're working between the chords of G minor and C minor and back. So we begin with a riff that actually starts on the 3rd, so this is an inversion, so it's a G minor chord, but we're starting on the B flat there, 6th fret of the E string, and we work up the arpeggio, so we've got B flat, D, and F, so 6th fret E string, 5th fret A string, 3rd fret D string. And we use that F as a little ghost note with a little either hammer on or slide up into the G at the 5th fret of the D string. I don't know if he did that on purpose or whether it was a little bit of a mistake or what, but there's this little, moving up into the G. So, and then we drop down to the G, 3rd fret of the E string. So that's the first part. Okay, again, I'm cutting that G short there. Then we move up to the C. So at the end of the bar, we have this. So this cool little line of G, B flat, C. Again, I'm hammering on to the C from the B flat. So 5th fret, D string, 3rd fret, G string, hammer on to the 5th fret, G string. And we hold that for the bar. So 3, Then we wait until the next bar, and then we have, so 1. Okay, so we've got D, F, D, then F, G. Okay, so 5th fret to the 3rd fret, 5th fret A string to the 3rd fret D string, back to the D, back to the 5th fret of the A string, then F, G, 3rd fret, 5th fret D string. So it's on the 2nd 16th note of the bar. So it's you have to think in terms of there's the beat and then come in. So 1. Okay, so all together 3, 4. 3, 4. Okay, so for this final line we have D, 5th fret of the A string, then, so we've got F there with that nice little syncopated 16th note rhythm, then back to the D, 5th fret of the A string, and then up to the G, 5th fret of the D string. So the F there was on the 3rd fret of the D string. So, okay, so 3, 4. 3, 4, 1. Okay, and that's the first 4 bars. For the next 4 bars, we have exactly the same riff, but at that start, instead of playing, we actually have this little lead in with the B flat on the final 16th note of the bar. Okay, so we just skip into it, and then it's just D, F, G, just as we did before, but we don't have that ghost note in there. Okay, so it's a lot more straight. So 3, 4. Okay, and then exactly the same. So there's quite a lot going on in this riff. There's, you've got to pay attention to those note durations, cutting them short, and then you've got some held notes like the, for the C there, you have to hold that for the full bar, and bubbly little syncopated notes. Okay, so it's actually a lot trickier than you might think when you first hear it. So take it slow, really nail those rhythms, listen to the original, listen to those syncopated rhythms in there, and then try it on your own slowly, and then you can try with the track. So now let's work through some sound tips. Now, for these riffs, you're going to want to go for that real stereotypical deep reggae Aston Barrett tone. And Aston uses a Fender jazz bass strung with flat wound strings. So here's my jazz bass, and I've strung it with flat wounds specifically for this lesson so you can hear how it sounds. And unlike round wounds that have that real zing to them, especially new round wounds, flats have a much more dead, mellow sound, and that's going to really help with getting that deep, chilled out bass tone. So, you can hear there's no real clank to it or zing or, top end on there. It's a pretty dead sound. Now, one thing that many players do when they're first going for this kind of reggae sound is they turn up the bass control on the amp. And that's fine, but I definitely advise you looking at getting a tone from your fingers first. So what I've done is I've rolled off the treble on the actual bass, but I haven't boosted anything. Now, Aston Barrett finger picks up here towards the neck, okay? And that's really important for getting that deep sound. So really pay attention to where you pick. So if you pick back here near the bridge, you get that very Fender jazzy, much more middling, more nasal tone. As you come towards the neck, you can hear you get a much rounder tone and a lot more bottom end. A lot of the bottom end is disappears when you play near the bridge. So over the pickup, and then up here near the neck, a lot more round, a lot more of that deep low end. So, to summarize there, you want flat wound strings, you want to maybe pull back a little on the tone control at the treble, on the bass, and pick near the neck. But you also want to focus a little on that laid back feel. Now, a lot of reggae and related styles, the bass plays behind the beat. And if you listen to a lot of dub stuff, like by people like King Tuppy, it's really laid back. It's so laid back that, just listening to it, you feel, pretty stoned. Now, it can be really tricky when you first try playing around the beat, pulling back or playing on top of it, especially when you try and think of it from a purposeful, rhythmically accurate standpoint. It's actually a lot easier if you just feel it, okay? So with something like this, where you're trying to get behind the beat and you're trying to feel that relaxed, laid-back feel, actually, physically relax. Physically relax yourself. Try and put yourself into that kind of state of being really relaxed. And then just try and let that come through your fingers. So it's the opposite of if you were playing in, let's say, a punk band or something like that, where you're wanting to be right up on the beat. When that happens, you want to feel awake and alive. You want to be really up on it. Actually feel it. When you're playing stuff like this, kind of reggae, dub kind of styles, really just relax the body and just try and think of it from that standpoint rather than thinking, okay, I've got to try and place the notes behind the beat. So one thing you can do is try to really exaggerate that feel. So I'm just going to play through Stir It Up here, and I'm going to purposely try and play it really behind the beat, okay? So as I played it there, I progressively tried to relax more and more and more. And it can actually feel like you're almost playing out of time at some of the time. So you're not slowing down, you're just trying to play it behind. 3, 4. Okay, so that was really exaggerated. So once you can exaggerate it like that and you've got that kind of feel for it, then you can just exaggerate it less. So you can just try playing a little bit behind the beat. As opposed to if I was to play it more on the beat. Okay, so I'm playing a lot more, well, in terms of my actual, bodily kind of awareness of it, I'm actually playing a lot more on it. I'm not relaxing as much. I'm just trying to, think, not necessarily on the beat. I'm not really thinking about where I am with the beat. It's more of a feel thing and just actually feeling more awake, let's say. Okay, so that's 5 cool Bob Marley riffs. So remember, all of the tab and sheet music and workbook, tracks, all of that stuff is all available to download over at talkingbass.net. So just follow the link in the info below. And while you're there, just sign up to the free membership to get access to a ton of different practice resources and hundreds of free lessons. Okay, I'll see you later.